What's going on, guys? Lurkin here. We've got. I'm just doing an update in another build for my Ball Lightning, Chain Lightning, Frozen Orb enchant. This was a fan favorite back when I made the three initial builds, which were Chain Lightning, Lightning Spear, CL Firebolt, and CL Frozen Orb. Frozen Orb was really fun, and this is not an Abbatoir of Zir farming build. You probably get away with some T9s. Might have some struggle in T10 and above. My glyph's only L5, so it may have gotten easier. But I was able to get to the bosses on some T14s, but I ended up just getting nuked. I think it's just a product of not, you really need that overflowing and the raiment spam if you want to make a push like that, and I just don't have that gear on this character. So we're going to get straight into some T100s, and then I'll talk about the build at the end. After running Abbatoir of Zir, which I hate, it's not fun. It's just spongy, and the glyph's going away. I just don't feel like grinding it. I've just been having a lot more fun making builds and like playing Spice. As you can see for T100s, like this thing just smashes. So funny. I remember back before Abbatoir of Zir, there was so much argument about what was the best BL build. And at the end of the day, it was like, dude, it doesn't matter. They all smash. T100s are such a breeze on basically every build now, besides like Incinerate. But this one was one of my favorites, and now it's like completely overkill now that we have the Tears glyph. So I'll end up taking the Tears glyph off here after this run just to show you like how it actually plays. Give me that Animus. I gotta change something real quick. Where is she? Oh yeah. Now we got my item pickup spam going on right there. Oh yeah. Actually, we'll just do it now just to show you how it plays without tears entirely. We'll just take that off as a whole. So no tears glyph. Still just smashing away. I feel like without tears you get a better sense of how the build actually plays. We'll slot something. Here's what we'll do. Do this now. We're just gonna put, I'm not even gonna change anything. I'm gonna put exploit here, and we'll put our winter glyph right in here. I'm not changing anything. Even though there's no point in running T100, this will just have a lot more fun doing these than I do in Abbatoir. I don't know why, I wish there was more reward from it. This is where I made all the builds in the first place. This will be it next season. Maybe we'll have content. I'd even just love some like T125 Nightmare dungeons. Just like something a little more hard. Something that's a little more difficult, but that's not Abbatoir of Zir. Zir is not fun. But I love Frozen Orb. It was so funny. There was so much argument before Zir came out about like, so many people would argue with me all the time about like, Firebolt's better than Lightning Spear, It's better than that. And it's like, dude, like, look at this. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, the arguments were so mute. This ball lightning is so incredibly busted that you can, it's so flexible what you can do with it, what enchantments you can run. As long as you can keep the mana up, which is typically chain lightning enchant. So chain lightning enchant, crackling energy, that's pretty good. And we're just gonna absolutely nuke the boss. I'm going to go over the inner workings of the build. We'll put the Tears glyph back on, because that's what everyone's going to have. So as you can see, it's like, you know, people used to argue with me, like, oh, boss damage. It's like, dude, 2 seconds, 2.7 seconds that the guy's dying, like, does it matter? Oh, we are not going to Gyokul. We're going to go to Saragar, and we're going to talk about the build. Come here, Juno. Something about Frozen Orb that I just absolutely love. So Frozen Orb as a hard cast. Oh. Frozen Orb as a hard cast sucks, and it feels like shit. Because it goes a set distance, say from here to here. Here to the stash. So say if a Butcher's charging, you have to constantly kite him and reposition, and he's just getting shields. Just delete all these items, then we're going to go over the build. Ice Heart. No, we did. Okay, so here is the build. If you don't have a Shaco, you can run like a Soul Brand and then Ever Living here, or you can run a Mage Lord helmet with total armor, mana, life, and cooldown reduction. But we have our Shaco, and then we have a triple DR armor chest. You just want DR, and then you want close distant. With triple armor, I run Ever Living here. For DR to crowd control, that procs from the enemies you chill from your Frozen Orb, and it procs from all the enemies you make vulnerable from Accursed, if you choose to run that over Metamorphosis, or Chain Lightning Enchant, because they're all vulnerable. Next we have Gloves. The only 3 things you really need on your Gloves is attack speed, critical strike chance. We do want lucky hit chance. It's mainly just to proc for better Ravenous proc, so that it procs faster. The last affix is really a flex. You can run Int. I recommend Int, all stats, or lucky hit restore. Then next we have BL Pants with armor, ranks of ball lightning, flat damage reduction, and then I usually go for distant. I like to have 2 DR distant rolls on my gear when I can, because what will nuke me is ghosts and ballistas, because they're unforgiving. In this build, we opt to run Asu's boots. You can run Ghostwalker boots with like ranks of teleport, frost nova, mana cost reduction, and movement speed. But what's going to happen is you're going to have to drop the Frozen Orbit for Elementalist, because you're going to need to get your crit chance somewhere. Or you could just not run the crit chance, because the overworld and just normal content is so easy that it doesn't matter this season, Season 2. So I run the Elementalist so I can get my crit, and not the Elementalist, the Asu's Heirloom. And the thing about Asu's is, so say you look at your movement speed. Where is it? 142. So when I evade, I get 75 movement speed, so that takes me to 225. But we're only able to move at 200, so 30% of 100 bonus movement speed, because you're going, base movement speed's 100, you're going to 200, 30% of that is 30. But what happens with Asu's is they factor in your total movement speed bonus that can go above 200. So after an Asu's Vade, you're looking at 225. After killing an elite, you're looking at 265. Your crit chance will go up by 30% of that. So if you get to 150% movement speed bonus, like above the base 100, which will take you all the way to 250, you will get 30% of that 150, which is 45% crit chance. nifty little thing about Asus. You can run a wand or a dagger here. You want all stats int, and then you want close and mastery. This is just the spare item that I happen to have. I like the frozen orbit aspect. It makes things freeze faster, and it's more visually appealing to my eyeballs. Next we have our focus. Ideally you want crit, mana cost, resource, and cooldown. Um, but this is a little flexible. I would just say crit and resource are like the two that you really need. Um, and then I'd probably take cooldown in the next slot as important, but you know, pick between the three of like LH restore, mana cost reduction, and cooldown. Next we have Tel Rasha. Everybody knows Tel Rasha. I don't even opt to run infected because I just don't need the damage. It just doesn't matter. You can, if you want, you could drop a Curse Touch for it. We'll go over the Vampiric powers next. And then you just have a ring with crit, max life, and resource gen. And the fourth slot, it doesn't matter. Lightning, close, it could not have anything. It doesn't matter. I usually just take crit, resource, max life, and then I like to take mana on my rings because the mana is just nice. I just like don't need the extra 3% damage that I would get from like a close roll, because that's what like 30% additive typically works out to about 3% crit chance. So additive is its own bucket when you think of like lightning damage plus crit damage plus fallen damage plus damage to close. That is its own bucket. So in a sense, it is a multiplier. So if you add, say you have like 1,000 additive, well, say you have 900 additive. The way the formula works is because it's a percent. It's 100 plus your additive. That goes into the formula as a multiplier. So if you have 900% additive from like lightning damage and crit damage and all that, the formula it's 1,000. So it's times 10, I think. But it doesn't really matter. So the point is if you have 1,000 there and you get 30% additive, that's 3% more. 1,000 versus 1,030 additive. So additives are multis. Everyone's always says like multiplicative damage times 10 times that times whatever. It's better. It is better, but 100 additive is worth a 10% multi. So that's why on a lot of my builds, a lot of my frost builds, I used to take frostbite because it's 160% damage to chilled, and that was really good for mobbing. Even though it's secondary, doesn't do anything. It's frostbite secondary is reduced damage after the enemies are frozen. Well, they're dead after they're frozen, but it doesn't matter because the 160% was basically like a 16% multi. You treat it almost like a charged, because charged is 15% multi, but frostbite in itself would be a 15% when you throw it into the formula. Even more so, as you get lower additive, say you have 700, say you have 600, 700, 800, like 100 additive will be worth more. It'll be worth like 12, 13% versus 10% if you were at 1,000. So sorry to bore you with math and go on a tangent there, but that's how additive works. So additive is multiplicative. It's in a roundabout way that doesn't just slap onto there. It's relative to what you currently have in your additive bucket. That's why you get diminishing returns as you get more additive, because adding 30 to 1,000 is 3%, but adding 30 to 500 is 6%. Next we have our amulet, movement cost, mana cost reduction, ranks of all mastery, and then the ranks of Hoarfrost, because we're running a frost build, baby. So your damage aspects are control, grav, storm swell, and conceited. These are the 4 that you need. This is a flex. You can run whatever the fuck you want. We'll go into Vampiric powers. I never take off on dying. Shit never leaves my side. So good. 3% heal every cast, and you're spamming. So good. Domination mainly for the execute when things are frozen, and the 24% damage to frozen. Ravenous for the stupid dummy attack speed. Then Prey on the Weak. because there was some controversy about it not working. I think it had something to do with like them switching the vampiric powers and then it not registering because it needs like a loading screen to register. So you can't just, I think like if you take it off and put it back on in the middle of a dungeon, it like won't work. Um, and then this one's a flex spot. We take a Cursed Touch. You can take Metamorphosis if you really like uh, the evade distance and the unstoppable. You can take Call Familiar. You can take Infection for 15% damage. We get a lot of vuln from Chain Lightning and Frozen Orb. Frozen Orb's Explosion, 30% chance to make enemies vulnerable for 2 seconds. Chain Lightning, when we look at our Static Surge, after spending 24 mana, which should be every 64 mana, which is every 2 casts. Every 2 casts, our next Chain Lightning enchant, which will be every 3 casts or so, will make enemies vulnerable. It'll make them vulnerable and will give us 10% of our mana back. So the more mana that you get, the more you get back from this. If you have 150 mana, you get 15 mana back times your resource gen. So that's why in a lot of my builds, I like to take the mana, because it benefits the Static Surge node, so that I get more mana. The more mana you have, the better your mana is because of Static Surge, because you're getting more back, because it has a higher reserve to pull from the 10%. Because of the tier, typically I would take the mana on Static Surge too, but what happens with the Tears Glyph, which I'm going to slot back in because it's stupid good, what happens with the Tears Glyph is it takes up so much fucking space on the boards that it becomes a stretch. It becomes a stretch to take even 7 boards when you start to factor in like another legendary node besides Frigid Fate. You can get 8 boards, but then you stretch yourself so thin. So for the board, I like to start off with Elementalist, typically on all my boards, because it's just nice. You're usually dealing 2 forms of damage. If my build has a Soul Brand, or it's if my build has a Soul Brand, or it's like Lightning Spear enchant, where it's making a ton of barriers, or it has a stable aspect, I like to take Reinforced here, because I have really high uptime on the barrier DR. Next, we take the Tears Glyph. If this wasn't here, this would be Reinforced here, and then I would take Elementalist here, and I'd path like that up. If you can afford the points, you would path up and you'd grab this non-fizz. So we have the Tears Glyph here, and then next I take Icefall, and I've called a bit of an audible, and I put Winter on here because I wanted more chilled DR, and then you do get a lot of damage to chilled here, and whenever you chill or freeze an enemy, deal 3% damage. So it's a 15% multi when you're mobbing, so it's pretty strong. It doesn't work for bossing, I guess, unless you were to stagger them. Maybe it'll proc once. But as you saw, the boss is just full, so it doesn't matter. Grab this node here for damage reduction from chilled. Next, we have Elemental Summoner. I just take the base and Adept. I just want the increased area. There was some tests done, and I saw some videos, and it does affect the orbit. It does affect the hitbox of the balls. Like if you don't have Adept on, hitbox is no bueno. We take the mana here. Next we go into Frigid Fate, and I love Enchanter. A fat amount of like 85.8 non-fizz to affect my lightning, and then that's 8.58 added to my Frigid Fate node, taking me from 19 to 27 bonus damage on vulnerable. That's why I take a Cursed Touch to ensure things are vulnerable. Next we move into Ceaseless Conduit. We're going to take Destruction. 39 dex is fine. I ran out of points, so I didn't have 4 more points to take this because I wanted to max my resists with this node down here, so it got sacrificed. And then next we just take the minimum for Control. We just really want the 10% increased damage to Chilled and the 20% damage to Frozen here. And lastly, we grab the Static Surge legendary node. Let's grab all this, and we're going to go into the skills. So for the skill tree, just take any 2 of these to progress through. And you're going to take 1 point in Frozen Orb. I'm going to take off Shaco so you can see. So, yeah, 2 points in any of these 2 to progress, doesn't matter. Next, we move into Frozen Orb, just 1 point. We path on up and grab Greater Frozen Orb so that they can make enemies vulnerable. Uh, then we go for the Elemental Dominance to get 9% more damage out of our Ball Lightning. We grab 1 point in CL for the enchant. I actually messed up. I need 2 points in CL. We need the Destructive Chain Lightning node because it'll make mana when Chain Lightning comes out. And then we pick it up when we get Crackling Energy. It really helps you to not need a generator on your ring. There's a lot of builds out there with recharging, so when Chain Lightning bounces, you get three mana back per bounce. But I made all my builds to not need it. That's because you make enough Crackling Energy from Ball Lightning and from Destructive CL with the Static Surge node that you just don't need it. Just 1 point in Flame Shield, 3 in Teleport. Get the Shimmering Teleport for the 30% DR, 3 ranks Glass Cannon for 18% damage, and you take 9% more. I'm a big Glass Cannon fan. In a lot of games that I've played, this would be reversed. You would deal 9% more damage, and then you would either take 9% more damage or you would take 18% more damage. Like in the Division, it's a 1 for 2. Not in your favor. In this game, it's a 2 for 1 in your favor, so Glass Cannon's huge. Elemental Attunement, lucky hits, 5% chance reset cooldown. It procs a lot. Well, it procs every 10 seconds about, because it has a 10-second cooldown. Next, just 1 point in Ice Armor just to take it. And then I round it out with Frost Nova, because why not? I love teleporting into some suppressors and just freezing them and nuking them. I have 1 point in Precision Magic. It probably won't be in the build. It is because I have so much lucky hit restore. So that's what I ended up doing. Align 1 point align the elements. 40% DR from elites. It'll stack up. We have our Mana Shield, 20% DR every 100 mana you spend for 5 seconds. Protection. Every time you use a cooldown, you get a barrier. If you don't want Frost Nova, you can take 3 points in Ice Blades, or 1 point in Ice Blades. It counts as another cooldown, so it'll proc barriers. Ah, shit. I still have Devouring Blaze on. That's why I had no points. So, next, we'll reallocate those. I've been running a Firebolt build prior. So, next we have Ball Lightning. We take Enhanced Ball Lightning. So this is where it's bugged this season. The damage rate is increased by 200% of your attack speed bonus. This caps out at 41% attack speed. Ravenous alone gives us 80% during an Ace Use Evade. 60% normally. But during an Ace Use Evade, you'll get 80% attack speed. Wizard's Ball Lightning, when BL hits a bunch of shit, makes crackling. Static Discharge, not really needed. You just need it doesn't work that well. But it's just a path to Invigorating Conduit, which gives all the crackling energy that we're making from the Destructive CL enchant and from the Ball Lightning pickup gives us mana. Next, we take 1 point Permafrost, and then we have 3 points in Hoarfrost to deal more damage to chilled and frozen enemies, 18 and 36. As of right now, Season 2, Frigid Breeze is broken in a good way. Frigid Breeze works for Ball Lightning. It actually works for all skills, not just cold damage against vulnerable enemies. It's any damage against vulnerable enemies will give you mana back, so you can take 3 points there. But what I'm going to do, I'm just going to shove these all in Teleport, call it a day. Because I don't need the mana. But you can take Frigid Breeze if you're struggling with mana. Next, just 2 points in Unstable Currents. 1 to unlock it, 1 to give us 25% attack speed. This is like its own bucket. So even though we cap it 100% for the Ravenous bucket, because Ravenous is 80, and then our gloves are another 15, that takes us to 95. That's why we don't run accelerating. I don't even think accelerating works for BL, but if it did, we wouldn't take it because we're already so close to the cap with Ravenous. We don't need any more attack speed there. Next, Coursing Currents, just to unlock 3 points in Electrocution, 15% less damage after you crit an enemy. Beautiful. And my favorite, Ver's Mastery. You can run Overflowing if you want, so that you can have more teleports. I'd say take this if you basically only take this if you choose to run Raiment. Say you had like a legendary helmet or So you had a legendary helmet, so you have a second armor roll. Then you have raiment, and you have legendary pants. You have your 2 armor rolls, your disobedience, you can run raiment, and then I would take overflowing. But if you don't have raiment, I don't think overflowing is needed, unless you really want to spam unstable currents. But in the current state of ball lightning, unstable currents actually isn't even needed. On my builds for a while, I completely took it off. I just didn't even use it. I just ran blizzard. I ran the 4 defenses and the blizzard, and then I was running snow guards so that I could be extra tanky. You can run shatter if things are more tanky, but it's just not the case in Overworld right now. So we're going to take Vers. Uh, I don't even know if the close damage actually works. It might be additive, which would equate it to like a really small damage bonus. But it's basically, it's just for the 20% close DR. And then it's increased by 25% after you crit. So that takes the 25% close DR. Really strong. And I've been rambling. Let's run another one. 300 Blood-Soaked Crag. This would be a good one. Let's smash this. So one thing before I start about armor, when you start talking about what you want to do with your gear, where's my helmet? All right. So when you're looking at your gear and like you want to run a bunch of uniques, the only thing you need to know is that currently for T100 Nightmare Dungeons, which have a level 154 enemies, you need to get near cap or at cap with perfect rolls. You need 2 armor rolls, so 29.2% armor, 29.2% armor, and you need a 66% disobedience. Or conversely, you could have 1 armor roll and a 99% disobedience. So that's why a lot of builds will drop the mess. If they have like a Shaco and they want to run Raiment and Tybalt, they'll drop the mastery ranks off here because it's like the least important thing on here. The passive's more important, mana cost, and the movement speed. And they'll run total armor on here, and they'll take a 99% disobedience, and then they're set. It's basically a point system in which you need 4 points. An armor roll on gear is worth 1, and a disobedience on say like pants or something, that is worth 1. Just want to grab this. This makes me miss my lightning spear build, where everything's stunned and I can just interact with the crystals a ton of way.
My savior.
Typically what'll happen in a lot of my builds is if I can only get, say I'm running like Shaco and Tybalt or something, I only have 1 armor roll because I only have it on the chest. So what I need to do is I need to drop something. I need to drop the least important thing off my amulet and grab armor percentage. So that'll typically be the ranks to mastery, or it's like another form of build. It'll be the cooldown reduction. T100s are an absolute joke right now. I really hope we get something harder next season.
Bless you, my savior.
But it's just how quickly these enemies die. I miss T100 so much. Missed when this was like the thing. It was all we had. Oh no. I'm not helping you. So yeah, if you want to do some AOZ, honestly, just get your glyph, play until you get bored or to just get frustrated, and then just stop. No fun pushing. It's not really worth it. There's no loot. What ends up happening is like you start to have to do some really drastic shit to push. You end up running out of mats because you're not running Hell Tides anymore. You're not running Nightmare Dungeons. You start like buying and rolling DR injured gear. you end up just running out of mats. And then you're like sitting there, deleting shit from your stash, just hoping to get a couple build crystals and they sell the thing. Damn, really do all this. We will run a T9 AOZ after this though, just to show. I'm just gonna run it standard how it is. As you can see, really no DR issues with this build. Oh my god, why is everything gotta explode? Let's get ready to nuke this boss. Alright, then we're gonna go straight to a T9, and that's it. This build probably will be decent and viable next season, assuming they don't gut Ball Lightning into the oblivion. I'm not gonna make any changes though. Straight in. The difference between a T9 and a T10 is staggering. The difference between a T14 and T15 is staggering. It's really crazy. So, when I get bored, I just like to go into some T9s and just rip them. Just fold everything. Feels like a T100. Yes, this is a good sub 10 farmer. I'm not into Abbatoir of Zir pushing builds that much. I made one or two. I don't want to make a guide. I don't like making a guide where I have to like explain like 4 different snapshot bugs. Like, I don't know. Where are you going here, buddy? Oh yeah. 5 abilities fine right now though. Type of farming, and then I'm just going to use my unstable current boss is small. Yeah, whatever. Where they at? Let me at them. Frozen and nuked. Come here, buddy. Uh-oh, caught without a barrier. Here's my cooldown. Where'd you go? 5 glyph. That's it. That's ball lightning, frozen orb, chain lightning enchant. If you actually manage to stick around and listen to me ramble for 45 minutes, you know, I'm really impressed with you. But I got like 13 builds, one of each core skill, cooked up right now for season 2. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then we got a conjuration build. Yeah, then we got one for each of the core skills, and I'm gonna update those for season 3 when I finally get information. If we don't get like a good reliable source of Ulm, every build's gonna have Firebolt, Chain Lightning, Enchant. It's just the best way. Firebolt's so good for damage, and then Chain Lightning Enchant's so good for mana and Vuln. It's just those are our two best options right now. All right, peace.